Hey everybody, I am super excited for this video today. I was just so inspired by Oppenheimer and the Villains Duology by V.E. Schwab that I created an alternate viewing order for Marvel's Infinity Saga. Now, these kinds of stories aren't linear. Instead, they start in the third act and bounce back and forth between the three acts as the story goes. Since reading the Villains Duology, I've been obsessed with this structure and I wanted to see how it would hold together in a series format. For more context or a deeper dive into this structure, I definitely recommend checking out the previous video, link in the description. But for the sake of this video, here's what you need to know. These types of stories start at the beginning of the third act, but quickly jump back to the first act. Even though these stories move around a lot through the timeline, they typically focus on Act 1 first, then Act 2, and then they'll focus on Act 3, but to the point where they'll stop jumping around the timeline finally. For the Infinity Saga, I will be taking the phases, phase 1, 2, and 3, as our acts. So phase 1 is Act 1, phase 2, Act 2, etc. Here's what we're starting with, but that's too linear, so let's mess it up. Starting with Captain America Civil War is explosive. I love it. I decided to throw Black Panther into the mix because it's an origin story like so many others in Act 1, and he had a large role in Civil War. I threw Ant-Man in here as well for the same reasons, but also because I don't like the placement at the end of phase 2. It's pretty anticlimactic, so I want to move it to a less important position. Phase 2 will continue our back and forth into the old phase 1, but I like throwing Spider-Man Homecoming in here as a jump forward in Tony Stark's character arc, as well as a chance to learn more about Spider-Man, who was in Civil War. The rest just kind of fall into line. I chose to put Thor 2 before the Avengers since Loki plays a key role in both. I struggled the most with the new phase 3. The old phase 2 movies that I have left feel random and are out of order, and also I've never seen Captain Marvel. I like Iron Man 3 first because it reminds us who the main character, the protagonist of the Infinity Saga is. It also sets up really well for, spoiler alert, Tony Stark's death in the end of this phase. Guardians 1 moves the story's focus to space, and most of what I have left is space focused, so this seems like the best placement of Guardians 1. I really don't know where to put Doctor Strange, but I felt like this was the best spot since he has an Infinity Stone and doesn't really play a role in the story until we get to Avengers Infinity War. I moved Ant-Man and the Wasp out from in between Infinity War and Endgame to have a really explosive ending. Lastly, I'm not going to use Spider-Man Far From Home at all because it feels like the start of a new phase. Personally, I think it could work. If Marvel had released these videos in this order, they probably would have needed to make some changes to individual movies to introduce characters and ideas differently. What do you guys think? If you enjoyed this reordering, like the video. If you had a different idea, jump down to the comment section and let me know. I'd love to hear your ideas. I've wondered if this is applicable to my own writing. Could I structure a series like this? The thing about this structure is that it either happens on its own. For example, the reader or viewer will need to know who Captain Marvel is when she shows up in Endgame, so you have to do a movie about her beforehand. Or it requires a ton of planning, and I think to plan an entire series around this structure would be an epic undertaking. I talked more in my previous video about how to apply this structure to writing. Check it out by clicking the card. Thanks for watching.